What's your name?
Abby Charles. I am from Trinidad and Tobago, but I live in Washington, D.C. Been a dancer from birth. All right, I danced before I walked. So, but I've been a trained dancer from the time I was about 3 years old.
Erica Ray. I've been dancing since I was 5 years old. So let's see, how many years is that? About 30 years.
My name is Nadia Diodone. I'm a Haitian folkloric dancer. I was born and raised in the United States, but of course I'm from Haitian ancestry. My mother, father are Haitian. I just happened to be born here in the United States. I've had my love affair with dance since I was a young child.
Did teach dance up to last year while I was in Trinidad and Tobago, but since I've moved back to the US, I've been just primarily taking classes. But I consider myself a performing artist, and I can teach as needed.
Both. I teach dance and I perform.
Okay.
Right now I do both, but more so now I'm doing a lot of teaching.
So I consider myself a teacher of kids. So I've taught dance to young people in varying formats, I'd say over like the last 5 years, with the larger concentration of my dance teaching happening in the last year while I was in Trinidad.
I've been teaching over 10 years. I've been teaching since I was in college, so I can't do the math. Very long time.
Before I became a dance educator, I was a teaching artist, and I taught within the tri-state area of New York. I also worked with a lot of artistic companies that either sent me out to these schools to where I would teach, and it's through that I've came across a program called Bilingual Pupil Services that train people to become teachers in the bilingual classroom. And of course I was drawn to go in so I can be in a bilingual setting where I would work with children, Haitian children, and teach in both Haitian Creole and in English.
My dance lineage. So I have been trained in, ballet, Royal Academy of Dance, ballet, from the time I was 3 years old. And I stopped training in the RAD syllabus when I was 18 years old. So that's 15 years of Royal Academy of Dance ballet training. Amidst that training as a member of the Metamorphosis Dance Company in Trinidad, we learned folk dance, Trinidadian folk, Caribbean folk, African, different West African forms of dance. Classical Indian was melded into there. I've been trained in jazz, so ISTD, the International, I don't even know what ISTD stands for, but it's British. So jazz, I have a jazz lineage, I guess. And then once I came to the US, I started dancing with Adrian Bolton and Catherine Smith in Washington, D.C. Their style was a mix of, the Horton, Graham, etc. And in Trinidad as well, we did a lot of modern with Claudia Applewhite, who actually passed away this year. And her focus, she used a lot of Graham as well as Horton in her training as well. So Graham, Horton, ballet, Royal Academy of Dance ballet, ISTD jazz, folk, a little bit of classical Indian, a little bit of West African, and then I danced with Taurus Broadhurst Dance here, and Taurus has a melding of jazz, modern, and African as well, West African I'd say, and then I've been trained a little bit in Afro-Peruvian dance too. So I've done a couple Afro-Peruvian musicals in DC and have been trained a little bit in that movement as well. So my lineage is kind of broad.
So I come from Horton technique. That is what I was bred on once I got to high school. Of course, I started with ballet and tap and jazz in the studio. By the time I started taking dance more seriously, Horton technique, I started with Faye Snow in Philadelphia, Wayne St. David. My very first dance teacher, though, was Brenda Lee, and then went from there, Faye Snow, then Wayne St. David, and Michael as well. There were the 3 dance teachers at my first high school that I started learning dance from. Once I got to college, there were so many good. I had Wayne again, but then I had Ronnie. I'm sorry. I can't think of everyone's name. Oh my gosh. But University of the Arts is basically where I went to school, and all of those teachers there were my foundation to where I am today.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. As a child, like I said, I got connected. My strong connection with the arts started with Miriam Doris Smith. As a teenager, going more into depth of my studies, with Miriam, I learned to dance, and it was just fun, easy going, and it was just natural. When I connected with Macondal and I met with the late Frisne Augustin, I was able to now start understanding the rhythms, which was very important. You know, the drum and the dance is connected. And with him, I was able to understand the rhythm, understand the casses. This is where I started to retain movements and not just do it for just to do it, but understand what I was doing. Understand that each movement had a meaning, and that meaning was connected with the drum. If I did a casse, I understood what casse I was doing it to. I understand when I did it, and I started to learn how to connect when to do it to what rhythm. So as a teen, I really started to understand that. As an adult, I was so lucky to work with the late Jean-Léon Destiné. Under his wings, I was able to teach with him. I became his legs. I became his body. He did a lot of lecture demonstrations where I took part of, and either I co-taught with him, taught for him, and during the demonstrations, I would be the person that would do the movements for him as he spoke about the history and the connections of the dances to the music and to Africa.
You know, I think it's the way of the world, right? So in a globalized world where people come from so many different backgrounds, I think fusion is something that's impossible to avoid. We as a people, we are a fusion of cultures, right? So my ancestors came from multiple different places of the world, and they all brought different experiences, different lessons. And whether they settled in Trinidad or elsewhere, what they brought there, now we have this melting pot of people, of cultures, and as such, I think the dance forms that have evolved are indeed a melting pot of traditional dances that have been fused together. So I can think of my own training. Even though I was primarily trained in ballet, I was a member of Metamorphosis Dance Company, and as a part of that company, there were times when we were trained in folk, Caribbean folk, and in learning folk, we also taught Indian classical, because the folk company, Malik Folk Performers, used to work closely with Shiv Shakti dancers. So the Indian and the folk, they've combined that as well. So, you learn so many different pieces, it's impossible not to be influenced by all of those different dance forms. As I think of myself as a dancer and a choreographer, there's fusion throughout everything. Mm-hmm.
I think that it's what I do is what everyone is basically doing at this point. My main class that I teach is dancehall fusion, which is a fusion of the dancehall style, and then combining my own personal dance, history within it. I'm a modern-based dancer, so a lot of modern movements may come out of it. Jazz may come out of it. African movements are very much connected to dancehall, so that is basically I'm a fusion, if you want to say so, because of the technique in my background in dance. So I think fusion is bound to happen. It's like evolution, I guess.
It's something that's a natural process, especially if you're looking at traditional dance. Let's take Haitian dance, for example. Haitian folklore stems from a tradition in terms of the voodoo religious ceremonial dances. Of course, we can't take those exact dances and just present them on stage because it would be a little bit monotone. So as artists, we take what we see in these traditional settings and create for stage presentation. So basically that's what folklore is. So in a sense, it is something that's going to be natural to do as an artist, and we're going to find it. Now, depending how much fusion you are is going to be on the taste of the individual. You know, and myself, I do create infuse, but I create still using the traditional base, and where you can still see the tradition of the dance, of the heritage. And if I do fuse more, I fuse it still with dances from Africa, you know, African diaspora, that still is more grounded and related to the type of work you see in the Haitian folklore.
Absolutely, I fuse. That's how I tell my story. I feel like choreography is telling your own story, and because, like I said, I come from different backgrounds in dance, it definitely is going to come out in my choreography.
You have to know you first. You know, you're understanding your history, and you're telling your history through your movements. So if you are familiar with that, you know who you are, you know who you come from. So it's easier for you to adapt another culture and be aware that you're doing the fusion, and you can explain that as whereas you're just trying to pass something off as your culture when you know clearly it's not. You're fusing it just to be able to create as an artist, which artists naturally do.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Okay, so yes, because even when teaching dance hall, like, I teach the basics a lot because I think it's more important to, for them to know where it comes from first before you start giving them this choreography. So a lot of times when I'm teaching the dance hall class, I give names of dances, I give a little background of where it came from, and I try to like make sure that they have the basics first, the foundation first, like you said, and then once I go into choreography, I'm like, this is the fusion part. This is, you know, where it's coming from. This is, you know, why I gave you the basics first, so that when you get everything else, it's kind of like coming all together.
I mean, I think it's so essential that we not forget our history, right? So as we translate and pass on stories to future generations, to others, being able to tell the story of where this movement came from is critical. And it's not just critical for dance, it's critical for music, it's critical for so much, you know. And coming from Trinidad, not only, you know, we have unique dance steps that have some history and lineage from West Africa, but some of it is very unique to the Caribbean, that you don't see some of those movements happening elsewhere. So understanding why the movement evolved, like what caused this evolution, is really essential and important to pass on to future generations. Some of it comes from just the music alone, which may have evolved from different instruments that are unique to Trinidad, and being able to tell that story is important and must be passed on from generation to generation as you teach. So I think it's critical that dance lineage be translated not only in the movement, but that it's fully understood by the persons who are engaging in the movement and who you're teaching, so your audience as well. Mm-hmm.
Say yes, but I think it's more important for them to keep what they have, like traditional. I think it's more important to them to keep it. They do have, like, you see that modern dance or contemporary is kind of, they have contemporary dance companies like National Dance Theater Company of Jamaica. I love them. Like, they're amazing. They're like the Ailey of the Caribbean, you want to say. Even though they have modern there and they have ballets that they perform, they also perform their traditional folk dances. They also perform, they even have dance hall as well. They have people come in from outside to teach, you know, inside the studio to the company members. So I think even though there's that fusion there, I think it's still important for them to keep what's traditional to them.
So I think there are many choreographers coming out of the Caribbean who are, whether consciously or not, creating a new form of movement because of the music that they use and because of their own influences.
I wouldn't say it's the future. It's already happening now. You know, it's already happening now, and it's still going to continue to happen. Again, depending on the artist and their taste, what they want to represent, that's where the difference is going to lie. But you're going to have contemporary company, which you have now, and you're going to have traditional companies. And it's all, again, going to be on the matter of the taste of the individual.